All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Manuel Miranda, and I'm the current president of AACMP Texas, Association of Change Management Professionals. And I welcome you to our first of four uh, collaborative seminars that ACMP and ICF are conducting this year. The topics are going to be varied depending on the time of the year. For our first session this year, we are going to start off with uh, the basics, as they say. Uh, the title of this session is Change Management and Coaching 101. It'll be presented by Miss Rachel Hamm and by Miss Rosemarie Philip. Um, the agenda for today, um, as you can see on your screen, we will have the presentation and then have um, talk about our next events afterwards. So, um, ACNP Texas and ACF, we're talking about, we're looking at sustaining change in through people and in organizations. That is what the association is for. We are promoting the discipline of change management throughout not only the state of Texas but globally as well. Um, and we're looking at how we will continue and to deploy this discipline and create education. Our collaboration with the International Coaching Federation has been designed around the synergy between the two disciplines. There is a sense of coaching when we do change management, and there is a sense of change management when coaching is involved. And so that synergy that has that exists, we are trying to promote that through this collaboration. Uh, Next one. So this is the overview of our partnership. As I mentioned before, we're looking at organizational change um, as the Associated Change Management Professionals. We're promoting career growth within ACMP. We're looking at organizational effectiveness, and we're also looking at within ACMP creating networking opportunities, such like this event today. ICF is looking into the change in people, where their key factors that they're promoting the discipline of professional coaching around the world, expanding the network worldwide, uh, safeguarding the code of ethics, along with collaboration with other communities like ourselves at ACMP, and they're raising the awareness of the profession to unlock potential in everyone. It doesn't matter what we do; we're always in need of some coaching at some point in our careers. Next. So that synergy that I mentioned earlier, it's about these four principles, which is thought leadership, awareness, leading change, and networking. This is what we are encompassing and embracing during this collaboration. Um, as I mentioned before, that synergy exists. It is a natural synergy that exists between the two disciplines, and we're going to continue to promote that as much as possible and as best as we can. Next slide. This is the team that exists currently as part of the membership of this collaborative team. Um, Carissa Gay, that you see up in the upper uh, left, she is the president of ICF San Antonio. Michelle Lopez is the secretary of ICF Greater Austin. Lindsay Honery, she is the president of ICF Houston. Aurora Geis, who is here. There she is. I see you now. She is the global task force on the global level between the two organizations for ACMP and ICF. So we're getting a lot of direction and help with from her because she is our liaison connecting us on a global level. And she is currently the ICF San Antonio director of marketing. Amanda Schmaltz, who I've not seen her come in today. She is our former president of ACMP Texas, and but now she is on the ACMP Global Board of Directors. Myself, ACMP current president for the Texas chapter. Tony Kalaf, who is also here, who is the Business Alliance Director over at ICF Greater Austin, and Susan Hodge, who is Director at ICF Greater Houston. This is the committee that comes together. We meet on a regular basis, monthly, in which we discuss our collaboration, coordinate these events, prepare them, find our speakers like Miss Hamm and Miss Philip, and launch these series for you. All right. Next slide, please. All right. So our objectives that we've had for this collaboration have been the following. In 2020, we built that synergy between coaching and change management. Right. We were looking at it particularly to address the bias that existed in the workplace. This year, however, we're going to explore how coaches and change practitioners use the tool sets that we have within each discipline and how do we sustain change in people and in organizations. We're doing that both, and that is our objective this year. So this first event, along with the three others in upcoming in the year, will be around this topic. Next slide, please. And so, based on that, I'm going to introduce you to the two young ladies that are going to present today. Miss Rachel Hamm, she's a change partner lead over at USAA in San Antonio. And Miss Rosemarie Philip, who is a leadership coach, an organizational development consultant, and a dear friend who I've known for a couple years now. Something like that. And they're going to lead us through this discussion of change management and coaching 101. Right? Ladies, please take it away.
Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting us here, and it's been a joy to get to know Rachel throughout this process as well. We bring very different backgrounds, which I think will be a huge benefit in the presentation today. So I own my own practice, both as an executive coach as well as an organization development consultant. I've been in this field for about 15 years now. I started off in leadership development and change management, and then in the nonprofit realm. So I understand how different it is from the nonprofit side as well as the corporate side. And then through my work in leadership development, that's really where I started digging deeper into how do you change a culture in order to support your leadership development efforts. And that's when I got my master's, and found that my coaching skills, if I were able to hone them even further, would only greater benefit my change practice. And so when I launched into my own consulting work, that's when I dug even deeper, which is great in my practice currently. So I'm just going to let Rachel, if you don't mind, just introducing yourself before we start. We have a poll for you guys. So Rachel.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Hamm. I am a change partner at USAA, like Manny said. I've been practicing in change management for roughly 5 years or so, officially. Unofficially for a lot longer than that, because you do change management all the time, even when that is not your title. To be brutally honest with you, and very transparent, I begrudgingly went through coach training initially. I say that, by the way, my coworker today is very needy today. And so I apologize, but she does not want to stay on the ground. Welcome to 2021. But anyway, last year or the year before, I had a director who wanted us to encourage our executive or enhance our executive coaching skills. And so she volunteered us or voluntold us to go through a coach training program. And I didn't really want to do it because I didn't see the value initially. And I had other plans. I had other things I wanted to work on and accomplish. But I told myself on day one, just go in with an open mind, see what this is about. Maybe you can learn something. And I'm really thankful that I did because having the coaching certification, the coaching training has really enhanced my practice as a change practitioner. And I'm excited to share that with you today and share, along with Rosemarie, how we can work together in these two fields and how we can bring them together. All right. Manny, would you mind putting up the poll, please?
Can everybody see the poll?
No.
Uh-oh.
Do I need to stop sharing?
No.
Oh,
There we
here it
go.
is. Okay.
I just launched it. We're good.
Yeah.
All right, so we would love for you to weigh in on the poll. What's your field, or which field is your primary area of expertise? We just want to get an idea of who's in attendance today.
All right. Looks like we have a lot more in the change management realm. So that's great. Fantastic. Okay, I'm just gonna wait for a couple more. It looks like we're getting some folks coming in. Let me those. All right, so it looks like, yeah, we still have a majority in the change management and versus the coaching realm. And I understand that we do tend to use both expertises, but whatever we lean into the most, like in my practice, it depends on the project, which one I'm going to lean into more. But if you said that that you were in change management, I would love for you to put in the chat box which are you more of an internal change management person that you're an employee like Rachel, or are you an external change management professional where you're working on projects and working as an external consultant? So if you can just pop that in the room on the change management side, since that's a bulk of our people today. Okay, so we do have a mixture. Fantastic.
Oh, Christy said she's just getting into change management. Welcome, Christy. Exciting opportunity.
So I just shared the results with you as well. So you can see our balance within. A big difference between the internal and external. I've worked some projects where I was even hired as a consultant to be an internal change manager and represent the company because they weren't they didn't have the competency already built within, and so they wanted a change program built from within. So it'll be interesting to see everyone's various perspectives as we're walking through this presentation. And it sounds like from a lot of these, we're seeing that many have played both roles. And the same goes for coaching, where you could be a coach within your organization, or you could be an external coach, which I'll talk about in a little bit when we're doing a deeper dive into coaching. So do you mind moving the slide, Rachel? Thank you. Okay, so when Rachel and I sat down to talk about the intersection between change management and coaching, one thing we discussed was what is really the purpose of a change management program? And it really is to provide this foundation, a real structure to mitigate risks around a change, and to help people to be able to move along with the change and advocate for the change. And so in its framework, change management is essentially very linear. Even though we may bounce around within that process, it is still very linear because it's based within a framework that that Rachel's going to share around the competencies within change management. But the actual experience of change is not linear at all. It's all over the place, and it depends on each individual that is going through the change. And so coaching skills are really a crucial part of navigating that change experience within the framework of a change management program. And that's a lot of what we're going to speak about today. Because with coaching skills, that's really, in order to have a successful change, you have to understand people's desire to change. What are their fears around the change? What is the resistance, whether it's intentional resistance or underlying around that change for each and every individual? And that can make or break whether or not a change is successful, no matter how solid of a program you have. If you're not able to actually pull some of those things out of your people, then what you will be offering within that change management program, might not meet their needs if you're not digging into that. And so coaching skills can really help draw some of that information out that you really need throughout the change experience, not just at the beginning, not just at the end, but in between, in that messy middle, as well as after the change, in order to have truly effective, sustained change, which is always the goal, not the rip a Band-Aid off quick change that is on a gushing wound, so, which is usually when we get called in, right? Do you mind going to the next slide, Rachel? Thank you. So the Human Capital Institute and International Coaching Federation partnered for a study recently, and these were some of the results that I found fascinating, especially since I'm from a learning background as well. I started off as an instructional designer and leadership program designer as well. So this was fascinating to me that in this research study, the respondents identified the coaching related activities, whether one-on-one, whether it was within the team as like a group coaching setting, that was the most helpful method to actually achieve their goals within the change and achieve those greater initiatives. And that the coaching activities were actually rated as more helpful than what was done in the classroom, as whether it was e-learning or on Zoom or in the actual instructional classroom training. So and so that intrigued me. But if you think about what I just shared around the change experience, if you're not digging into some of those fears and the resistance and people's desire to change, and tapping into that, which you can do in the classroom setting, but providing an environment that you're a group coaching environment or a one-on-one coaching environment that provides that safety net for you to answer those questions and ask those questions. It didn't surprise me when I saw these results in the study. And so they identified that coaching really is a powerful tool to really get to the root of that resistance to change, and where is it actually coming from, even if it's unintentional. And so clearly there is a strong intersection between the use of our coaching skills as well as a change management program. And so that's why Rachel and I are here today. So let's dig into coaching. So the real definition of coaching, this is according to the International Coaching Federation, is partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. And as I shared before, there are really different layers within coaching. So you can have a professional coach practitioner, and there's different credentials within that realm. Those that are not from the coaching realm, but more from the change management realm. There's several different levels. There's your ACC, which is where you've done 50 hours of training and 100 hours of coaching experience. Then there's your professional level as well. That's the level that I'm at, where you have 125 hours of training and 500 hours of coaching. And then you have your MCC, which is your master, and essentially people that have their MCC have the goal of training people to be coaches. So there's a lot of different layers within the professional coaching world, but really it's someone who provides an ongoing partnership with the client to really help them fulfill what they want, what their personal and professional goals are, and to bring that out, to enhance the skills that they already have, and to enhance the resources and their creativity in order to achieve their goal. An internal coach is someone who can also be a professional coach practitioner that could be credentialed as well, but is employed within an organization and is using their skills within an organization. Then you have an external coach who's credentialed that would be hired by an organization to come in and help partner on a project, or coach the leadership team, or coach one of the executives on the team. But then there's also the manager leader who has coaching, that is using coaching skills, and so they're using their knowledge and coaching approach and skills to really create awareness and support behavior change within their team, even amongst their peers. It can be a really useful thing as well. And that, manager or leader may not have necessarily gone through a credentialing process, but a lot of organizations now provide coaching programs that are teaching, some of the basic skills in order for managers to be and leaders to be more successful. So let's dig into the core competencies a little bit, and please shout out or pop in the chat box if you have questions when I cover any of these. But within ICF, our core competencies are really what credentialed coaches are. It's our best practices, right? It's our standards of practice, and that is what we are graded on in order to get our certification. It's what we are trained on, and it's what we're expected to continue learning and growing and honing these particular skills. Because if you can do all 8 of these things within a coaching session, that's going to give the client the most success. So and so when you look at these competencies on the screen, if you look through 1 through 8, not the 4 areas, but the demonstrate ethical practice, embodies coaching mindset, establishes and maintains agreements. When you look at each of these, I'm going to ask the change practitioners that are in this session, which of these competencies do you think you already use very often in your work, like the most often in your work? What do you rely on the most out of all of these 8? Let's just pop those in the chat box. All of them. That's
All
good.
of them. Yes. That is
Only
correct.
ones you rely on the most, right? Co-creating relationship, cultivating trust and safety. Ooh, trust and safety is coming up quite a bit. Co-creating the relationship. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Rosemarie.
Trust and safety is coming up quite a bit. And
Well, I was going to add, if I look at this list myself, the one that I think is most pertinent to my change management work and the efforts, that I support would be cultivating trust and safety.
so you're the same one as what a lot of the change practitioners have posted in here. And then of course, communicating effectively and the listening is one that keeps, if we get to pick one grouping. I know we want to choose all of them, right? Because we do love all of them. But the reason why I wanted to ask is because I know, depending on the type of role that I had within a change project. So there's been times that I've been the change management leader of, a $180 million project, right? That I used very different skills because of, I relied on certain coaching skills more depending on who my stakeholders were, right? Versus when I was an instructional designer, but part of a change project, or when I was the leader of a change, but had a change management team that was partnering with my team. So depending on the role that I had, whether I was in the organization or external, then you tend to have to pull on certain things more than others. And yes, I love, Adriana wrote a comment that says that most of these are interconnected, that you can't really practice one without the other. And that is so true. And actually the version few months as the updated version of our core competencies. And you really can't have one without the other. Now, I would pose as well, if you're in a consultant role, it does make it a tad bit trickier with some of these competencies, coming from the definition from ICF, as far as like when I'll start sharing when I dig into each of these, that there can be some conflict if you're a consultant versus if you're hired as a coach. And so oftentimes when there are certain projects that had to be very clear when I was being the coach versus when I was being the consultant. And there were other projects where I really had to, I was always using coaching skills, but where, I didn't need to delineate between the two. But there are some projects where I really did have to, because they needed a true full-on coaching session, even though I was a consultant, and that can make a difference. So, oh, it sounds like I might be breaking up. So if that continues, just let me know. I'm going to shut off my video and see if that helps. Hopefully that will help. And so examples of conflicts that I've encountered, and it says constant tension as an internal coach and a change management consultant. No, that's true. And I think I'll give some examples as I'm walking through some of these core competencies where I've felt that tension, more, and have seen that tension even amongst. I've seen tension between external coaches and change management teams as well. So hopefully this will shed some light as to why that might be. So if you look at these competencies, they're common sense, right? And that's why I think so many of the change practitioners were like, this is, what I actually already use, and you can't have one without the other. Well, if you look at competencies 1 and 2, so demonstrating the ethical practice, embodying the coaching mindset, those are really about the being of a coach, right? So that is much more around your presence, whereas the rest of the competencies are much more about what you're doing as the coach within that coaching session. And so the very first one is demonstrating the ethical practice, and with that, it's understanding and consistently applying coaching ethics and standards of coaching. So it's meaning that you're sensitive to the client's environment, to your stakeholder. If you're a change management professional, that you're really sensitive to their environment, to their values, to their beliefs, that you're maintaining confidentiality, and that you're making, this is where there's sometimes tension on this, is that you're making a distinction between coaching and consulting, and coaching and other support professional, other of professional supportive things, like when hired. It's part of our ethical practice to refer. There's a difference between coaching and therapy. So when do you need to refer someone to therapy? That's why we go through such extensive training as coaches around that. So that's part of our demonstrating ethical practice. And that's where I was sharing that sometimes in certain projects, I always make it very clear when I start a project, I have the definition between coaching and consulting in my agreement with the organizations that I work with. And so clear state the definition that you saw in the previous slide, and that I will delineate between the two when I'm working with the client. The second one is embodying a coaching mindset. And with this one, it's really maintaining a mindset that as a coach, that you're open, you're curious, you're flexible, and the biggest piece is that you are client centered. So you are focused on their goals, not yours. And that's where, as the change manager, taking that, like that judgment away of, I know the end goal I have to meet, right? And that I'm trying to bring this person to desire to change. But you can't have that when you're bringing it into an actual coaching session, because it's about them and what their needs are, and where they're going to. And so with that, as a coach, you're continuously working on your own awareness of self, which is really crucial, and making sure that you are mentally and emotionally prepared for your sessions, and that you're seeking help from other coaches or other support professionals when it's needed as well. The third one is establishing and maintaining an agreement. And And this is when you actually partner with the client, with your stakeholder, to create a really clear agreement about the relationship that you will have with them, and about the coaching process and goals. And so, establishing agreements for your overall coaching engagement is really crucial, but also your agreement within the coaching session, and coming up, with this is what we want to focus on within the session. But again, it's what the client wants to focus on within the session, not what you want them to focus on within the session. And so what does the client want to accomplish? What is, and that's where you define also the measure of success for that individual session. And so, and it's got to be a measure of success that the client defines. You help them clarify it, but they're the ones that really say, this is how I know we will have accomplished my goal by the end of this session. These are the desired outcomes that I have as the client. And then we move into the cultivating trust and safety. And so that's where this is so important. And I can understand why so many of the change practitioners are like, number 4 is so crucial, because you have to have that trust and safety in order to achieve any of your goals within a change program. If you don't have trust and safety, no one's going to listen to you. No one's going to follow the structure that you put in place. No one's, going to want to do the work that's required in order to make that change effective. And so this is all about the coach seeking to understand, right? And it's adapting your coaching to the client's needs, and acknowledging their work within that session, because they're doing the coach isn't actually doing a lot of the work. The client is doing a lot of the work within this session. They're the ones that are really, really digging deep. And so acknowledging their work within a session, showing empathy, acknowledging their feelings and their perceptions, their concerns, their beliefs, and really demonstrating openness and transparency around that. And so that's also where you can see some tension too, is if you're not removing your judgment, and you're, we all come with a different lens, right? And if you're not trying to come from that neutral lens, then it's not creating that safe space for the client to be able to feel that trust and that safety. Then number 5 is maintaining presence. And so this is being really fully conscious and present with them, but continuing to be very open and flexible, and confident in your skills. And so I'm just seeing the comment. In coaching, much of the credibility is communicated via the presence of the individual or team brought forward or identified as the change person. Yes, thank you. And maintaining that presence is really making sure that you're demonstrating curiosity. So if you're the one who is talking the most, like I am right now, I am not playing the coach role right now. And so if we're working on a project and I am the one that's mostly talking, I'm not seeking to understand, and that it then erodes your trust and safety. So if I'm not maintaining that presence throughout the session, it automatically erodes all of the things that we have done leading up to that point, 1 through 4, right? And so that maintaining presence is really crucial, because it's managing your own emotions within that session. It's being okay with not knowing or not agreeing with what they have to say necessarily, and really allowing that space for them to pause, allowing space for silence, allowing space for reflection within the session. And so again, if you're not maintaining that presence, then you're going to be eroding all of the work that has been done in order to really move the client forward. The sixth competency that we talk about with ICF is to listen actively. And I'm not going to belabor a lot on this one because I know that this is one that change practitioners all of our trainings really focus a lot in this realm. But it's, again, seeking to understand and focusing on what the client is and is not saying in order to fully understand what's being communicated in the context of their realm, of their environment. And so listening actively is making sure that you're reflecting in order to ensure that you have clarity and understanding of the situation, but that they have clarity and understanding of the situation that they're bringing forward. And it's your responsibility as the coach to notice when there's different energy shifts, when you're watching that body language, those nonverbal cues, and when is there emotion, when are you hearing it in their voice, when you have that major shift, and not just noticing it, but bringing it out within the session. I noticed that, X happened. What does that mean to you? Because a lot of the times the client doesn't realize that they're doing these things, and that can call attention to something that's even deeper, right? And that's your job as the coach, is to get to that something deeper, to see that resistance, right? And so it's your job to mirror the client and to look for those patterns in behavior and emotion and energy shifts. Every time they talk about this one topic, they keep shifting, those types of things. So if you're not having a consistent relationship with someone, coaching relationship with someone, it's harder to identify those patterns. You can within the session, but the ones that are those even deeper rooted are the ones that are going to be across sessions. And then evoking awareness. So what this really means is really facilitating the client's insight and learning by using different tools and techniques that we're taught as coaches, like powerful questioning or using silence, to allow them time to reflect, or using a metaphor, or analogy or visualization in order to really seek some more clarity and dig a little deeper. So you're asking questions, you're about their thoughts, about their values, about their needs, their desires, and you're helping them identify patterns in their behavior, in their thoughts, and their emotions. And you're inviting the client to really generate ideas on how to move forward, as well. And you're sharing your observations that can create a new learning for that client. And this is where it can get tricky, because as a consultant, it's your job to tell someone what to do. But in coaching, you aren't telling them what to do. You are helping them bring it from within, from themselves, and helping them be able to build the skills on their own to identify those next steps. And And the big key here is before you share your observations as a coach, you're always asking permission first, right? It's not and that was a hard transition for me, frankly, when I was moving from consultant brain to coaching brain, is not to just jump in and fix, right? When you have uncovered all of these different things, it's asking permission and and the observations you're sharing are observations. They're not, this is how to fix it. Right? Which is a big difference. And again, that can be a challenge when you're hired as a consultant, because it is your job as a consultant to give the best guidance and to create a clear program and to give assignments and things like that. Yes, you can give assignments as a coach, but again, they are coming out of what the client has created. It's not something that you have necessarily created. So and that leads us to the final competency, which is facilitating client growth. And this piece is where you're really partnering with the client. Again, you're not telling the client, you are partnering with the client to really transform their learning and their insights and moving that into actual action. And it's all about client autonomy. It's not about, again, telling them what to do. It's their own autonomy to be able to determine what are my next steps to do. And so in this competency, this is where you're celebrating their progress and success within a coaching session, as well as over time, the shifts and changes that they have made over time that are towards their goal, right? Not your goal, but their goal. And you're acknowledging and supporting their autonomy, and in how you're creating and designing their goals, their actions, and even their methods of accountability. That's another requirement within a coaching session is, okay, so you've decided that you want to do X, and these are the action steps that you share you would like to do. How are you going to hold yourself accountable? Who's the support system? Who are the people you're going to tap into? Or what are other ways that you can incorporate accountability? And that's where the client will come up with people that they identify, or different ways to incorporate a habit by calendaring something, or whatever it may be. But again, it's not your consultant role to tell them this is how you're going to hold accountability. It's them coming up with it on their own, and you asking the questions to get them to think about it. Because how many times have you worked with someone that they come up with this amazing plan and ways to support a change in themselves, but they didn't ask the question of, okay, how am I going to, what are, like, it's like the bumpers in a bowling alley. Whenever you go bowling and you put the bumpers up, the rails up, what are going to be my rails to make sure that I'm still going straight towards the end goal, towards those pins, right? And so I just used a little analogy right there. That was a coaching thing. So, and we use those as change practitioners. It's just that these competencies, coaches are trained to really hone those skills, and continue honing those skills over time. It didn't just stop with my certification years ago. It's something that I'm actively working on, all 8 of these, and attending courses around them, and doing practice sessions and things like that, to better myself so that I can continue focusing on those 8 competencies for my clients. So any questions around the competencies. And I know, Rachel, you've been watching the chat and all of that. Are there any things that you noticed in the chat that you'd like to bring forward and chat with me about on here, or share your perspective?
Yeah, Adriana put a quote in here, or put a comment. She said, "In my experience, coaches failed to establish trust because the definition of trust isn't clearly understood." So I took a page out of my coaching certification and I asked Adriana, how would you define trust? Because I think that's one of, just asking that question is an example of where coaching can come in and benefit change practitioners, which is not making the assumption that you define things the same way your clients define things, or you define or understand things the same way that other people might. And so I purposefully asked Adriana how she would define trust to see if we were on the same page. I just wanted to point that out as an example of taking a coaching skill and applying that towards a real life situation.
I love that. That was a perfect example. And and I love, thank you, Adriana, for sharing like a poor experience with the coach, because I can tell you, I have had poor experiences with coaches and I've had poor experiences with change leaders as well. I think sometimes change leaders get a bad rap. I had a VP that literally, for the first year of a project, used to call it the squishy expletive. But then after a year of working, one-on-one with me, was like, wow, this is the hardest stuff I've ever done. I didn't realize that, like, getting people to change, that's actually my hardest, skill. So I've experienced issues on both sides. And so that's one thing that, it's, again, one of the competencies is removing our judgment for the next time that you're working with someone. I don't want that to stop you from pulling in a different coach, right? Or pulling in a different change leader, or change expertise. There's a lot of different methodologies out there. There's a lot of different styles out there for both coaching and change management. So, and that's the beauty of, because we're all different individuals, which, is why we're here. So thank you for sharing that. So, are there any other questions you want to pop in the chat box? Or, again, those core competencies, they're very self-explanatory. For change leaders, you're already doing a lot of these things. It's just a matter of stepping even deeper into them. And hopefully I answered the question earlier of where there tends to be a little bit more conflict, either between a coach and a change leader, or as a person who practices both, because I am certified in both. So, as well.
So no questions in the chat, Rosemarie, but let's move to our practice opportunity.
Perfect. Yes. So we are going to put you into some breakout rooms, into some small groups. And this is a scenario where an executive has been given a directive to be more present. Okay. To be more present. And he wants you to help him do that. And he's not generally known for being that warm and fuzzy with his employees. He's usually all business. And so what we want to do is taking those core competencies that I just walked through from a coaching perspective. Take your change leader hat off here. From a coaching perspective, how would you handle this particular scenario? So we are going to put you into breakout rooms. We're going to give you 5 minutes to really discuss how you would handle this scenario from a coaching perspective. What questions would you ask? What competencies would you be leaning into the most? as a coach. And if, so just start off when you hop in the breakout room, just introduce each other briefly. And then the person who has the most coaching experience within your group, let them start. And if no one's ready to jump in right off the bat. So rely on some of your coaches that are in here to ask those questions. So we'll give you 5 minutes and then we'll give you a 1-minute warning. But if you have any questions, you will be able to ask them of us when you're in those group sessions as well. So, all right. So whoever is going to be putting folks in breakouts, you can do so now.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Okay, Rachel, Rosemarie, you can go ahead.
All right. So, so from a coaching perspective, what were some of the things that that you guys did to handle this scenario in particular? Oh, 5 minutes is too short. That's good to see. What were some of those things? If you don't mind popping in the chat.
Okay, I didn't know if you could just talk.
Oh, you can
Yeah,
talk.
you could talk.
Go
Go
for
for
it.
it, Wendy.
I guess one of the things in our group, we had Paula, Adriana, and myself. We were kind of like, one of the first things is, how did he feel when he heard it? Is it something he cares about? Is it something he cares about? And then did they really, was it a credible source? Does he believe in the feedback? But how did he feel? What was his first reaction when he heard it?
Love that. Client-centered. Perfect. What are some others?
Asking him how others might be experiencing him and getting his perspective on that so he can explore how his behaviors are contributing to what others are experiencing, and then how do you want them to experience you?
I love that because it's so easy when you're in the moment to jump in and fix, right? Or make that assumption because you've observed he's not warm and fuzzy with ways. But some of these questions to figure out where he's coming from and spin around. What other ones did you guys come up with? These are great.
Carissa added in chat, curiously exploring his world without judgment. Yes.
Love it. Love it. Any others?
Okay, well,
All right,
let's
well,
move on. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm going to
Let's
take
move to
over
change management.
from here. We're going to spend a little time deep diving into change management. And I recognize at the beginning of the presentation, we asked you to weigh in and let us know what's your primary field of expertise. I know we have a few more change management practitioners than we do coaches. So we won't spend a significant amount of time here, but I want to make sure we have a good solid understanding. I am seeing that Carissa, I just wanted to comment on this real fast. Carissa just added a comment of, what does being present mean to you? That's a question that she would ask the executive. And Rosemarie said, yes, Carissa, with an exclamation point, and I will add an exclamation point to that as well, definitely. So let's pivot to change management and let's talk about what is change management. Simply put, it's the practice of applying a structured approach to the transition of an organization from a current state to a future state to achieve expected benefits. It's kind of a mouthful. So let me give you my interpretation of what change management is. On one side of the bridge is current state, which is how people are operating today. What they're seeing, what they're thinking, what they're doing, what they're feeling, how they're acting, what they're currently doing today, current state. On the other side is a pillar labeled future state, which is how you want them to be, what you want them to see, think, say, do, experience, whatnot. And there's a big gap between how things are today and how things should be tomorrow. And change management is about closing that gap by allowing people to cross the bridge to get from current state to future state. That's my simple analogy of what change management is. And so what I'm going to throw out to you is in chat, if you will, put down some real examples of why people might hesitate to cross a bridge, an actual bridge. What are some real examples of why people might hesitate to cross a bridge? Risky, feel unprepared, fear of falling off, the unknown, yep. Job loss, yep. Ooh, does it know what's on the other side? The weather might change and get windy, yes. The question of what will happen to me, maybe past experience is providing some fear or trepidation of walking across the bridge. Could feel out of our comfort zone. I grew up in Florida outside of Orlando, and there is a business there called Gatorland Zoo. And I very distinctly remember going to Gatorland Zoo as a young kid and being told, go cross that bridge. And to me, it was the scariest thing in the world because it felt like a rickety kind of bridge and there were a lot of gators underneath. And I was worried about what is going to happen if the bridge breaks and I have to deal with a gator. Was that a rational fear? No. Do I think they would have had that bridge at Gatorland Zoo if it wasn't safe? As an adult, I can say no. As a child, that was my biggest fear. What happens if the bridge falls or collapses? And so I would ask you to consider that kind of sentiment or that idea that crossing the bridge, going from the old way of working to the new way of working, can be pretty scary for individuals. And it can be pretty scary for all of the reasons you outlined. Maybe the bridge isn't safe. Maybe they don't know what's on the other side of the bridge. Maybe there's a missing plank, or maybe there's a bridge troll or a gator underneath the bridge, scaring you and preventing you from safely or feeling like you can safely cross the bridge. So change management is really about helping people cross that bridge successfully. Okay. So the ACMP has a standard for change management, which is really an overview around the knowledge, the norms, the processes, the tasks, and the skills that are necessary for change management practitioners to be effective in doing change management. Really, the standard is about following a framework to help you as a change practitioner help the individuals cross the bridge. And when I talk about individuals cross the bridge, I'm not just talking about the people who have to do that thing differently, but I'm also talking about the executive sponsor who's in charge of the project. I'm talking about the project team who has to basically build the bridge. I'm also talking about the stakeholders or the people who feel that they can, or the people who can make or break the change, the people who have a say in the change, and even the people who think they have a say in the change, whether or not they actually have a say in the change, in addition to all of the people who have to do that thing differently. So your impacted audience members. That's really who we want to help cross the bridge. And so this standard outlines that framework of how to make that possible. We talked about earlier at the very beginning of our presentation that change is a process. It is not a linear movement. And so while I demonstrated the change management aspect through the use of a bridge, that's pretty linear. But sometimes people walk across the bridge and they run back. And sometimes they stick a toe out and they're like, oh, I'm not quite ready. And they go back. And sometimes, they'll cycle back through that multiple times. And so you'll cycle through these elements multiple times as well. So for evaluating, we're going to start at the top and work our way around, but evaluating change impact and organizational readiness. This is really about understanding what's changing and why. What happens if we don't change? How is it changing? When is it changing? Who is it impacting? Who's your executive sponsor? Who are your stakeholders? Who are your project team members? Who are your impacted audiences? How big is that change going to feel? I like to think of it as, is it going to feel like mind blowing? It's really huge. Or is it pretty easy, pretty intuitive, pretty manageable to get through? So really understanding the magnitude of the change and the risk of the change. And then looking at how ready are the people for the change? Is it something that they can implement today and they see the need? Or is it something that they're not ready at all, or they don't even think it's needed? They don't think it's valuable to change. What risks or resistances do you anticipate? What are those things where people might not readily cross the bridge, and why might not they readily cross the bridge? How does the culture of the organization impact this change? And what are the capabilities of the organization? How are their communication skills? How are they with learning? Things of that nature. So it's really, I would propose to you about understanding the change itself and the components that go with the change. Then we move to formulating the change management strategy. And this is where you really put it all together. Everything you learned by evaluating and understanding, what are you going to do with that? What is the strategy or that long-term goal on helping people cross the bridge? It might look like creating a case for change. Like, what's the reason why we need to change? What happens again if we don't change? How are you going to help people cross the bridge with what are the tasks and the milestones that will make it easier to navigate across the bridge? How are you going to help the stakeholder? The stakeholders? How are you going to help the sponsor? How are you going to help the project team members and the impacted audiences? So you really begin to craft your strategy around sponsorship, communication, training, stakeholder engagement, understanding what's your success goal, what's your strategy going to look like to be successful, and sustainability. So once you get people, how are you going to keep people at the end of the bridge? How are you going to keep them at that future state? Then we'll move into developing the change management plan. And if I'm really honest, which I like to be, this is so much about creating your to-do list. It's your task list. What are the actual steps and the actual tactics that need to take place to realize your strategies? What are the communications that need to happen and when do they need to go out? What are the learning opportunities? Who's going to be responsible for doing them? When are they going to take place? It's really about creating that master list of helping people navigate across the bridge. And then executing the change management plan is checking off the to-dos. So actually working through that plan, ensuring that the things that need to happen are happening, and also evaluating, are those things working? And if they're not working, what else do you need to add to your plan or to your task list to make that possible? And finally, the last step here is closing the change management effort. So it's a a look back. How did things go? Is everybody across the bridge operating in the new future state? And are you at a point in time where that future state is now your current state, and you don't want people to go back? And so this is laid out in a circle, but realize in the change management world, you can bounce back and forth between these circles or between these bubbles multiple times. And you very clearly will, because as we saw before, change is not linear. It is an experience and it can go all over the place. So I know we're getting close to being short on time, so we are going to do this next practice together. And what we want you to do is this time take off your coaching hat and put on your change management hat. And we've got basically the same scenario. So an executive has been given a directive to be more present, which he feels he already does, because we did ask that question. But he's willing to consider additional tactics. So he wants your help putting together a change management plan. The resulting plan should involve his 4 very introverted direct report leaders. So from a change management perspective, how would you handle this scenario? And feel free to come off of mute and to chime in or to put your responses in chat.
This is Adriana. I'm going to jump in since there's a lot of silence. So I feel like the scenario is still, still calls for coaching within the change management framework. Even if you're involving additional people, is specifically telling you they're introverted and they, maybe not the greatest people to show presence, right? So it involves even maybe working with these people and coaching them and how to be present if you're an introverted. So, just in a quick conversation like this, I couldn't come up with anything a lot different than, these people also need coaching. Maybe not a super formal coaching, and maybe it's more of a combination of a coaching and training. Okay, so this is what it may look, depending on the vision of this company of what being present is, right? So this is what the company expects from you for being present. This is what it looks for this company. So let's see, how can you change your behavior around this and be effective, still be effective at your job, and embody these qualities of being present as defined by your organization.
Yeah, Adriana, thank you for sharing that. You are 100% correct. And that's exactly why we picked this scenario. This was a very real scenario that I experienced right after I finished my coach training. And this executive said, I need help being more present, put together a plan for me. And I thought, ooh, I can use my coaching skills here. First of all, Mr. Executive, what does it mean to be more present? How do you feel about being given that directive? And he was given that by his senior leader, so it was handed down to him. What does it look like to be more present, and how are you being present now? And what we ultimately determined was through the coaching conversation, while he doesn't always come off as warm and fuzzy, he does have a real passion for his employees. And he felt that if he could be more present and help reassure them during times of change, it would go a long way for his organization. And we had a further conversation around, well, what does being present for your employees look like? And what we decided to do was go ask the end user. Let's go talk to the employees. Let's have some conversations and ask some open-ended questions to them. Hey, frontline employee, what does it look like for an executive to be present for you? Okay. How does your current executive, Mr. Sponsor, actually do that for you now? What would you like him to do differently in the future? And so I was able to go to the actual impacted audience members and ask for their input and use that and provide it back to the executive along with his leadership team, and then have a further conversation or coaching conversations around, what it would look like to execute and to carry out those items, that feedback that was given to us or given to me by his team members. And so that was an example of a real situation where I could have made an assumption that I knew what it meant to be present, or I knew how I made the assumption that either this executive would do it or his leadership team would or wouldn't do it. I could judge that very easily based on my past experiences with them. But putting on my coaching hat, I was able to remove the judgment, to remove any potential assumptions, and allow them, along with their impacted users, to weigh in and figure out what this would look like. And then I could use that information to craft the future state and build the change management plan to help get to that future state. Any thoughts or questions or comments around that? Okay, I'm going to turn it back to Rosemarie to wrap us up here.
Awesome. So, when Rachel and I were discussing this presentation and getting prepared for it, we had come across this. Is it really an intersection, or is it something even greater than that? And that it really needs to be an integration between coaching and a change program, because if your people are honing their coaching skills, that's only going to make the program that much more successful. And so really trying to tap into those skills, bring in partner with a professional certified coach, but also train up both your change management team and your leaders in these coaching skills to make sure that it is much more of an integration and not just an intersection where you do your piece and I do my piece. Really making it more of a partnership and integrating it throughout the change process from beginning to end. And really, it doesn't end, really, especially in today's world of change, constant change. It's always an evolution. So making sure that it's incorporated throughout. And so we have to work together. It will only make us better if we are bringing in the competencies, the coaching competencies, with a powerful change framework. But thank you so much, all of you, for attending this session. Please feel free to reach out to either of us. I will pop my email address in there. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And Rachel, I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add.
Yeah, I would just add very quickly that as a change practitioner, if you opt to go and get a coaching certification, or even if you don't, there are beneficial skills that you can hone that will ultimately elevate your change management practice. And I saw that firsthand, even begrudgingly, when I initially went through the coach training program, but it really has elevated my change management practice, in that I'm better equipped to remove judgment, to ask the open-ended questions, to allow others to kind of self-figure out what it is they want to do and how they want to accomplish it, because ultimately that will make it more successful in the end. And so I would just add that as a very real note on how you can take those coaching skills and use them within the change management practice. I too am available. If you have any questions or want to reach out, I would be happy to chat more. Okay. Manny, I think we turn it back over to you.
All right. I don't think there was anything else left on the slide deck. Was there?
Yes, sorry, I hit stop too soon. Let me pull it back up.
Okay. So, likewise, as you can reach out to Rosemarie and Rachel for any additional questions that you have over this topic. You can also reach out to ACMP Texas if you're looking for more information on change management, and or ICF Greater Houston, or San Antonio as well, in which the president of ICF Houston is here, Lindsay. She's over on my screen on the upper right. Carissa is over on the bottom left. So if you can wave, Carissa, there she is, the resident for San Antonio. And in Austin, they don't have a president yet, but I know Tony Calaf and Michelle Lopez are the two that are kind of running things over there for right now. I don't think there's anything else after this. We do have 3 more events this year, so please be on the lookout for that. We will have the next event will be May 7th, and that will occur during ICW, International Coaching Week, hosted by the ICF
And actually,
group.
that date has been updated. International Coaching Week was moved later in May, so the event will take place on May 20th.
Okay, so there we go. So we have an update of that. So it'll be May 20th, and the speaker for that right now will be Miss Teresa Poole. So be on the lookout for the announcements of that and registrations for that as well. All right. I believe this is it. Thank you very much for attending the session today. We we encourage and will always try to provide a means to uh, continue the growth of this synergy over the 2 disciplines, because we do definitely see the importance of what this brings. All right. Corinza, Lindsay, you guys want to add something?
Just thank you to Rachel and Rosemarie for a fantastic presentation. It was wonderful to see the true integration of the disciplines and how those question asking skills really empower us to facilitate change, not just at the organizational level, but it's really helping people develop that internal awareness that helps them be the leader they want to be, but also just sustain what's needed. We all know change isn't going away, so it's more a matter of how do we navigate that and have the agility that's needed. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Yes, and this is Lindsay. Thank you so much. As coaches, we partner with our clients, and that partnership extends to other professionals and capacities where we can improve or deepen the effectiveness not only of our own profession, but those of others. And so again, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to partner with ACMP.